Yes, party on, Wayne.
Yeah, it was a party on. Garth, we're not worthy. We're not worthy.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Combos. This is a little segment I like to do called Talkin Shop. Today I'm with the man, the myth, the legend of Pikeville, the guy who runs the show at Collier Motors. Robbie, tell me a little about yourself. Let people out there know in Combo Land what's going on here at Collier Motors.
Well, right from the start, Collier Motors, my dad was a Nash dealer from 55 to 80, and then we continued to buy and sell AMCs and collector cars from 80 to 2015, but our business actually closed in 2018 I think it was. My dad passed away, and it took us a while to get on our feet to try to dispose of the estate. So the business is not open now, but I do set appointments to come visit here just like you came, and we have direction on how we can sell cars, from the estate. So we have we've had numbers of people come. I welcome people to come. They may not be wanting a car, but it's about an hour and a half tour. Maybe sometimes it's gone as far as 4 hours. Sometimes, depending on how many interested parties we had. But people have come from all over to walk around here and see what's here, and then many people have taken something home with them.
Your whole life, have you always been a fond fan of AMC, or what's your favorite make, model?
Yeah,
what's your
AMC,
favorite car?
Of course, AMC and Nash are my favorites. And Bible says that he who loves certain things, he who loves riches will not be satisfied with riches. Well, he who loves cars won't be satisfied with cars. There's several cars that we love. Nashes, my dad was really fond of Nashes. There's been a Nash or AMC product, which is a continuous progression there in our family since 1937, and up until today, Collier here in Pikeville area has owned AMC or Nash product. My great granddaddy actually had the first car, they say, in the county. It was a 04 Maxwell. Back before the Depression, there was about 200 or 400 car manufacturers in the country, and then the Depression sort of thinned them all out, except for GM, Ford, Chrysler, and a few independents. But before then, a Maxwell was a car that was popular back then, and that's what my great granddaddy bought. And he also started selling and I got an ad for 1917. He was advertising in our local yearbook. He was selling Fords and Studebakers brand new as a broker. He had a logging business and a lumber yard, but he sold cars too. And then my grandfather had a Willis Knight, an Overland dealership here in Pikeville. And then the Depression came. Then the rains came. And then the Depression came, and they went out of business. And then in '55, they had a garage here for years. But in '55, my dad sort of transitioned, and he and my granddaddy became Nash dealers. And then that turned into American Motors. It turned into Rambler, then American Motors, and that's where we're at. I've had some health problems over the years, but I had to stop my work at UPS. I was a UPS driver for a while, and still not completely over that. But I do manage to let people find cars and new homes for their people want to drag an AMC, or there's about half the cars are AMCs and half the cars are off-brand cars like Chryslers, Chevrolets, Datsuns. We've had a bigger selection before, but most of our first string cars are gone, so we're in the second string and third string cars here. But still, hard to find some of these out here. So we never were a salvage yard. We didn't now operate as a salvage yard, so most of the cars here are whole cars, not been parted out. So you can find you a complete car, and if you need to use it as a parts car, or you need to try to restore it, that's up to you. But they're very, very affordable, not asking a mint for anything, and there's only a few really valuable cars out here. But a lot of people have found found something they like. There's Jeeps, there's trucks, there's you know, a lot of Ramblers and Nashes and stuff. So yeah, it's worth a visit. It's on people's bucket list. They've heard about it for years, and we are not what we used to be. You know, back in the 90s and stuff, the place did not look grown up, and the cars were more organized, and the grass was mowed. But we're planning. We have a future hoping to sort of wrap everything up in the next 2 years here.
Yeah, when I first came out here a year and a half ago, of course I found out that you were doing open walkthroughs and appointments off of another YouTuber that came on out here to film, and he did a complete hour-long film. And I was driving a truck down the interstate on my way to Chicago, and I was kind of taken away by it. And I definitely had to come on out here because me being an AMC freak myself, this is kind of like every AMC guy's dream. I mean, I'm staring at AMCs over here. We got some in the bushes in the back. Yeah. There's Pacers. I'm looking at an Eagle wagon sitting over there. Nash, and of course, what's this we got behind us?
That's a 52 Nash Healey Roadster. It's a parts car I bought because the first one we ever bought, I bought 4 altogether. The first one we ever bought was an incomplete car, and so I needed a dash and correct engine. So we bought the first one, weren't quite satisfied, bought 2 more from Hollywood. The American Pickers guys bought those 2, and then this was a parts car I got out of near Washington D.C. It was like an old sort of dilapidated mansion. I walked up on one, and the guy had it in his garage. It had already been stripped, so you know, I mean, somebody could have restored the car back then. It's questionable now whether it could be restored, but I bought it as a parts car because you can't find parts for them. You have to even manufacture the parts. So I you know, it cost thousands of dollars to recreate what I needed. So we went in and bought the parts car. But it's a Nash Healey Roadster. They won in their class in 1952 in Le Mans, which was a very, very prestigious race. They came in 3rd overall behind 2 Goldwing Mercedes that were in another class, and those exact cars are over $1 million now. They know where those 2 Le Mans cars are. But Nash did really good in Le Mans, and it was a joint venture between Nash, George Mason, Nash Corporation, Donald Healey, and Pininfarina. He built these bodies. They hand built them in their studios, the same studios where they built Ferraris and Maseratis and Alfa Romeos. They made these Nash Healeys, and all hand built, and so each one of them are a little bit different than the other one because they're all hand built. But they had styling bucks that they would make cars on, but still there's little variations here and there. It's interesting that most of the chrome, except for the very thin parts, is actually cast brass.
Imagine that.
They cast it in brass and then chrome over it, so it won't rust. It's the chrome, you know, as long as chrome's good, it won't rust because it's brass.
So I can imagine trying to find parts for one of those is pretty much dang near impossible to find.
Right. There is a nice guy. He had a lot of foresight, and before they became valuable, he probably has 80 to 100 of them, and they only made 500 of them. And he's a nice fella. I want to go see him sometime soon, but anyway, he doesn't really sell parts, but he will recreate parts, and he'll help you with technical advice and all. So he's a good guy.
So out of all these cars that are sitting in this lot, out of every single one of them sitting here on the dirt, which one is your favorite? Well,
it would be my first car was a 74 Javelin, and it's still here. My dad saved it for me when I was 13 years old, and I drove it all during high school, and we parked it on cement when I moved off to college, and it really hasn't been driven on the road since 1984. We started and driven around here, but not on the road since 1984. It's got 69,000 miles on it, and it's here. I like this little Rambler American 440. It's a little 2-door hardtop 64 Rambler American. that car was so popular that the country of Argentina bought all the pressings and stampings to recreate the car down in Argentina, and they continue making that 64 Rambler American down there. They called it the Renault Torino, and they continue to make that exact body car to until 1982.
Really?
Very, very attractive little two-door hardtop. They had four-door versions down there too, but they raced them. It was like the people's car of Argentina. It was sort of like the class of an Aston Martin.
Yeah.
It was not a low-end car. It was a sort of a luxury car down there. We back in the day, I bought one, a 64 Rambler 440H, red and white. Perfect car with 40,000 miles, and these guys came up from Miami and bought it from us, and they were going to convert that car into a Renault Torino because it would be more valuable back then.
Yeah.
I think so. I guess that's what they did. But then, of course, my dad was fond of the Nash air flights.
Yeah.
The very aerodynamic. We've got three of them out here, and one of them was a movie car. It was in the Alec Baldwin, Kim Basinger movie, The Marrying Man. They had two identical ones on the lot at the time, and they filmed with those. And the lesser one ended up rolling in an accident. They had a car chase with gangsters and all chasing Alec Baldwin, and that car ended up getting rolled. The other one did, and this one is the nicer one.
Was that actually in the script, or was that by
Oh
accident?
yeah, no, it was part of the script. They had intentionally rolled the car. Nashes were known back in the 40s. They had unitized bodies. They didn't have a frame on body. It was all unitized like they build cars today. And
kind of like unibody. So.
Unibody, exactly.
Right on.
And so they were pioneers in that. And we have films of Nash's, the early days of the Hell Drivers, which was an automotive stunt team. The Nash, Lucky Lee Lott and another Lott fella did jumps and rolls and all types of stuff with the air flight Nashes back in the 40s. And they showed how strong their unitized body was. And they gave a demonstration. They filmed this demonstration. They said, this is an egg. And this egg, the shell is very, very thin. But you can, and they had a way that they set something down on it, and because the weight was all evenly distributed, you could put a whole bunch of weight on that and it wouldn't break. But then he said, you could tap it from here and it would break, and he showed it was a real egg. Well, that's what a unitized body is. It spreads out all the stress, so it can actually support a lot of weight, even though it's thin and not a heavy frame. And
yeah.
I could show you places on some of these Nashes. The inner rockers have they're built like an airplane. If instead of a solid slab of metal, they punched big holes in the metal to lighten it, and actually it structurally stiffened it, but it's lighter. So it just looks like you go in an old airplane and see the struts and all. That's the same way these Nashes were built. We pulled a Metropolitan apart. The Metropolitans were built like that, and these 52 Nashes were built like that.
So relatively really good, strong automobile for its day.
Yeah, and they would get good gas mileage. Back before it was popular to get good gas mileage, Nashes got good gas mileage, and they were family friendly. And that's what my dad, he was family friendly. He was a little bit slow getting into muscle cars back then. He sold so many little grocery getters and family friendly cars and good gas mileage. And there's one story, Daddy, he had to work on the cars out on the sidewalk. We were so cramped for space there, and he was adjusting this carburetor and doing something to it, and he had turned the petcock off from the fuel pump.
Yeah.
And there's a glass bowl there, and then the carburetor, and he worked on it and got it ready, and the guy got his bill ready and paid his bill and started out in the country and got about a mile out in the country, and it cut off. So he hitchhiked back to town and said, "You got to lick that calf over again." And what it was, he had not turned the gas back on. So he had driven out a mile out in the country on just that little bit that was in the bowl and in the carburetor. We also knew a fella, he grew up to be a preacher, but in his early days, he and his sister and another group were going to the coast in their cars. He had a Ford, I think, his sister had a Rambler American, and he said, we're going to have a contest who can get the best gas mileage going to the coast, and whoever wins the contest gets to pay for everybody's gas. So they took off, and he sort of got lost, and he had brought an extra tank of gas to put in his car so he could cheat and win. And when they got to the gas pumps at the coast, they measured off, and she still beat him on that Rambler, even though he had cheated and put more gas in there. And he was a preacher, you know. He was trying to pull a fast one. But anyway, they were good cars. People loved them. If you went into an AMC dealership, especially like in the 70s, 80s, your average income was higher than the median income in America, because people bought these Grand Wagoneers, which were better than Land Rovers. People think Land Rover was something, but the Wagoneer was a better vehicle than a Land Rover. You know, it was people loved. It was a quality car, and it was harder for them to change over the years, and with the technologies and stuff, they had to be real thrifty, and so they found creative ways to reuse designs that they had engineered. But But anyway, it's a good group of people that loved AMCs, and we still know a lot of them, and have enjoyed meeting new ones over the years here. And a lot of people have a Gremlin story or a Pacer story. Wasn't it your mother that had a Pacer?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, my dad had a black Woody wagon, 77. My mom had a tan wagon, which was also a 77. And I believe somewhere down the line she also had a Pacer X. I remember as a little kid, probably only being about as tall as this coffee cup, walking out to the garage in a diaper and staring at that great big huge X emblem right on the door.
Right.
So, and I vaguely remember that. Then again, I could be wrong. And I think my mom also had a yellow one, if I remember correctly. Maybe it could have been the X. I don't know. Like I say, I was very little.
Yeah.
And then when I was 20, I was walking home from work one day, and I kept passing this old Pacer sitting in a driveway. And I went on up, and by this time I was like, you know, I wonder what the deal is with the old Pacer. And it was the only Pacer left, I think, in San Pedro, and it was an old Arizona car. And I went knocking on the door, and some bearded old man came to the front door, and what you gonna do with the Pacer out there? Well, you know, I can't get it smogged out here in California. You know, I can't get it registered.
Right.
So I'm thinking about selling it. Well, how much you want for it? $300. Well, you know what? I'll tell you what. I get paid in 48 hours. I'll be here on Friday. I'll hand you $300 cash. And of course, we went out there, put a battery into it, and it was the 3 on the tree. The column was kind of tore up because he forgot it was the 3 and went to go shift it automatic style. Kind of tore up the bushings a little bit, but popped a battery in it, dumped some fuel in it, and the darn thing fired right up like it was parked yesterday. And it turned out the car was parked in the driveway for like 7 years. Didn't run. And manually put it into first, and it moved. Reverse worked, everything on it worked, but then I had to pop the hood and put it into second and fire it up, release the clutch just to go ahead and take it on up the hill to the house. And I went off to Fire Academy after that, and it was stolen.
Oh no.
Somebody stole it.
Wow.
So I parked it, and when I came back, it was gone. I called the record companies. The record companies had no knowledge of it being towed. The county had no knowledge of it being towed. And because I hadn't had a chance to register it yet, because you need to go out and go get it smogged and all that other stuff before you can get a tag, they told me I couldn't even file a stolen report on the car. I could file a report, but I couldn't file a stolen automobile report. So therefore, it was like, poof, be gone. And I lost my car. And it took me the better part. Well, that was when I was 20. I'm, 40. I was 42 when I first came on out here. And I laid eyes on a red one you have sitting out here. And I first laid eyes on a tan one but it turned out the tan one was a little bit too far gone. So I got a blue wagon and, of course, that little red coupe. And it turned out that little red coupe was sitting back here for 34 years. The blue wagon was sitting back here since '89. And when I brought that little red one home, I cleaned it, polished it, just took all the moss off the car, and it actually got published in a calendar already.
Really? Okay.
Just by cleaning it.
Yeah.
It actually got published in a calendar already.
That's pretty cool. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of my Pacer cult following. I love the cars. I was raised in the back seat of one.
Yeah.
My mom called me. I called my mom up the other day. She said, you know, I'm so proud of you for finally being able to get that blue one home. She says, you know, I could kill your father for making me sell the brown one to pay rent when I should have just gave it to you.
Right. How about that? Yeah. I remember when I first laid eyes on a Pacer, I was 10 years old, and my dad rarely took us to the new car shows that American Motors would have in each of those zone offices. In our zone, the closest zone office was Washington, D.C. So that's where they would have the yearly introduction of the new cars. They'd show you all the commercials. You'd see all the new literature. It was just a good pep you up to go sell the brand new years of cars. And when we got there, we were in this like a convention center parking lot, and everywhere I could see were maroon Pacers. They were all optioned the same as just over, you know, in the hundreds of maroon Pacers. All had the basket weave interior. I'm not sure if you've ever seen that. It looks like Indian basket weave.
Yes.
Panels in that was popular design for Pacers. And we got to drive each dealer after we saw the new commercials. Always, you ought to look on YouTube for Pacer commercials, and they have several funny, amusing little commercials that we got to see for the first time that during the car show. And then my dad was driving it home, and I was sitting next to him, and he worked so hard. You call him a workaholic, but he still, you know, good natured about it. But he had to work so much because everything was on his shoulders here. And so when if we were sitting in church or got anywhere sitting still, he would sort of start dozing, and we'd see his eyelids dozing. And so we sort of got in the habit of steering on long trips. We'd steer for him. Yeah. So when we were coming back from my granddad's house, everybody, the whole family was looking at him, dozing off while he was driving. And you know, so we volunteered.
Grab that wheel.
No, we actually steered home, and we would wake him up if he needed to put on brakes or whatever. But I drove back from Washington D.C. on the interstate or whatever big road it was then, steering most of the way, and my dad, he was feeding it. You know, I was you know, I enjoyed it. I thought I was driving a car, and he told us how to. I mean, there was no trouble, but he was just such a hard worker that, you know, he when he got sitting still, he sort of dozed off.
Now, you learned to drive on this lot, didn't you?
I did, right on this road right here. It used to not be cluttered. There's, you know, main drag through here, and our house burned down in Pikeville, and we were in transition, so we spent a lot of time down here before we opened up. And in fact, there was an apartment for some folks here, but it was on a Saturday, and my mom said, "You've been misbehaving. I'm going to tell you to stay outside. I'm going to lock you outside, and you have to stay outside for a while." And her car of choice back then was a '69 Toyota Corona 4-speed. And
I remember those.
Yeah, we always loved the car. It looked like a little Rolls Royce. It was the Corona. We were always wanting to paint it two-tone. It was tan, and we were paint it like a Rolls Royce because that's what we thought the car was. It was a well-built little car. The Corona is the top of the line, and she left her keys in there, and I'd seen them shifting gears and all, and I'd seen how they did it. And of course, I had been steering since I was 10. I was 11 then, so I hopped in it and started. I knew how to shift gears, and I came all the way down here. I'd get it up to the 4th gear, brought it about here, and then the end is down there. And so I'd sort of do a little spin at the end and slide on brakes and then go back the other way. And I did that for a good hour or so.
And they never caught you. You never got in trouble.
No,
You never got a whooping from your daddy from sliding a car sideways in the car lot.
No. But before that, we had been driving our go-kart through here. We had a Gremlin go-kart. It was by Rupp Industries. It had I think it was
fiberglass body.
No, it was plastic,
Really?
Plastic body. It was the first of the go-karts that had bodies on them. Rupp Industries made them. They made them in blue and red, and we had a red one we got during Christmas. And
wow.
So we burned up these roads before then, and that we might find the frame of that thing back in our storage building. I have what's left of the plastic body.
No kidding.
It's pretty much collapsed on itself because of the age, and it rattled. We rattled it apart and tried to reinforce it, and then it rattled it some more. Then we took the body off and drove it some more, and we drove it to the tires were totally worn off, and it's probably still around here somewhere.
Still lost in the trees.
Yeah, but I went to a car show 20 years ago, and I would have paid $1,500 to replace it. I just didn't have a way of getting it back from me. It was probably in Pennsylvania at the time, and I would have gladly paid $1,500 for one. And I've seen one maybe a year ago sold for $1,700.
Wow.
It was nice.
That's
But
neat.
I wouldn't probably not buy one today. I'm so big I can't even hardly get in my Javelin now.
You need a pacer.
Well, yeah. People don't know. A lot of people know about Pacer, but a lot of people don't. The Pacer on the passenger side was actually larger.
4 inches longer on the door.
4 inches. On the driver's side, so you can get in. Now, they make 3-door cars now, and they make doors, like trucks have extra doors on, but to get the passengers in easier, the Pacer was longer on one side than the other, about the door, And there's other things. It was the first rack and pinion car by American Motors. You can take the whole cradle, the suspension cradle, and put it, if you had a 54 Ford F100 and you wanted a rack and pinion, you could take it out of there and it basically bolts right in. You just had to drill some holes. And I talked to a guy, it was yesterday or the day before, that his 41 Chevrolet truck has a Pacer front end under it.
Really?
Yeah, and there's another guy, he has spoken for a rack and pinion out here he wants to take back with him. I had a rebuilt
Just the rack or the
whole rack? Well, he wants the rack, but you can take the whole suspension down. Mustang 2s were popular. Mustang 2s, the old, the second generation Mustangs.
Yeah.
They were, or third generation. They were popular because you could put them in a hot rod, put the front suspension, unbolt it. But a Pacer is actually a lot more sturdy, tougher, and they go in a lot of hot straight rods. Now, Good Guys has their own suspensions, and you can get them all chromed and all this. But if you were on a budget, you can use a Pacer front end.
Yeah, I came close to buying one from an old man. His name was Weissman out in Arizona. It was the entire the car was there except for the front end.
Really?
And he said that the front end of that car went into somebody's race car.
Really?
And but that's the only thing that stopped me. That he was kind of a tight ass too.
Really?
That's the only thing that really stopped me from getting that one car. Is where the heck am I going to find a front end for one of these?
Right. I was looking at a Ford panel wagon. It's like a pickup, but it's like a van, but it's a pickup truck in the front.
Yeah.
And it was a panel wagon, so it didn't have windows inside. It would have been a nice hot rod. And these guys, these two brothers, had it in Goldsboro, and that's what I was planning to do. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, it already had a Pacer front end under it. And I'm almost certain. The guy's still living. In fact, I bought another truck for him here lately.
Yeah.
But but Pacers were unique. They were called the first wide small car, and one of the commercials, it has like a LTD pulling into the screen. In the commercial, this big Ford LTD, and then they get out and then they start taking the fenders and the doors off and the hood off, and it's the same width, but it's a Pacer underneath.
Here's this round little car.
Yeah, but there's another one that they have a shell of some other car. The shell is of a Pacer, I think, and it don't they drive a
it's
car?
It's the outer skins of the Pacer. You'll see the doors, you see the roof. with the hood and the
Yeah,
fenders,
yeah.
everything except for the back end. It's like it's cut off at
Right.
the doors.
And then they drive something else in another GM or Ford car.
Yeah, a
right
full-size Ford car right into it, kind of like
yeah.
it's a tent or a garage.
Yeah. And then there's
Yeah.
another one that had all these dancers up on this sort of runway like you see models on. But there was these dancers and it looked like the you know, male and female dancers with doing all this split sequins and everything. And they were introducing the new Pacer, and then the Pacer starts driving down the runway, and it's too wide for the set, and everybody's jumping off and stuff because there's not enough room on the runway.
And the dude that looks too stressed out wearing the goofy hat catches the chick, and you
Really?
I didn't know it was that wide.
and he drops her on the floor.
Yeah. Then there was also one more I remember. There was a guy who had ran a submarine sandwich shop. He's a chef. I think he probably had a chef's hat on. And they were running late and had to get this big old, I don't know, 6 foot long sandwich somewhere. And so he finished making it inside the car. His big old Subway sandwich stretched across the whole car.
Yep.
And they delivered it.
The AMC Pacer. No other small car can make this sandwich.
And of course, the Pacer was basically almost the width of a Cadillac, a full-size Cadillac Eldorado, but it had a wheelbase of 100 inches, so it was just...
Yeah, it was almost as wide as it was round, almost, Daddy used to say. But
and the difference between the coupe and the wagon was the same wheelbase, but it was only like 4 inches longer.
4 inches!
To add for the extra payload room.
Right.
And their advertisement on the wagon was, look, I could put the box in sideways. Remember that commercial?
Right. I don't remember that one, but you know, AMC had a tight budget, and they did sponsor a James Bond movie, The Man with the Golden Gun. They also sponsored a John Denver, George Burns movie, and I don't like the title because I felt like it was a little sacrilegious, so I won't even repeat it. But they featured a Pacer wagon in that with John Denver and George Burns. I didn't like the title, so I'm not going to repeat it. But you can.
And there was Gun Ho with Michael Keaton.
Okay.
Michael Keaton and his wife drove a Pacer wagon in Gun Ho.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, that's the story where Michael Keaton, he's a union auto worker, and a Korean car company comes in and pushes the American company out.
Right. Yeah.
They reopen the plant as a Korean car company.
Okay.
And he's out to save the plant and all the union jobs for the Koreans.
Of course, the most famous Pacer movie is Wayne's World.
Yes, Party On, Wayne.
Yeah, it was a Party On. Darth, we're not worthy. We're not worthy. Yeah, that really gained a lot of popularity. You have to have a good sense of humor if you have a Gremlin or a Pacer. Also, I show people on our little videos. I lead a tour around here, and I include some videos. And when I get down, we have a old Pinto, and Pinto owners also have to have a good sense of humor because you know, they had rear-end explosions if you hit them in the back. And I show this little picture of how they paint the flames on the back of the Pinto instead of on the front of the hot rod. So Pacer, Gremlin, and Pinto owners have to have a good sense of humor.
Yeah, mainly because, you know, the Pacer was the fishbowl.
Yeah.
You know, I heard them called UFOs.
Or terrariums, rolling terrariums.
Yep.
And we actually have some not rolling terrariums. You know, Jeff Foxworthy said, if you have a house that's mobile and 16 cars that are not, you might be a redneck. Yeah. And so we have a non-mobile terrarium over there. It's got all types of stuff growing inside.
I call that one the greenhouse Pacer.
Yeah. Then there's we have a lot of natural oddities out here. I have a Chevrolet that I call during Christmas you see these Chia Pet commercials, and this looks like a Chia Pet inside. That's my Chia Chevrolet. But yeah, it's you know, we are actively trying to sell cars. They're whole cars. They haven't been parted out, but I will, you know, reluctantly sell parts if you need some. I've got a lot of parts already from car shows inside that are used. Don't have much in the line of new old stock anymore. Right now we sort of have a trust to try to take care of the whole property before we ever even think about owning anything. We're in charge of, you know, basically processing the estate before we even own anything. So,
Do you ever think about maybe keeping one of everything and maybe selling off all the off-brand and turning this place into a museum?
Well, there's a guy in New York he's taken a few cars up there to be in a museum, a used car museum. But no, our days of acquiring are basically over with, unless I find a Rambler Scrambler out there or something.
Yeah.
We've had it. We've enjoyed it. My dad loved people to come here and look at it, but we are wrapping it. And if I find a nice little gremlin for my daughter or what, I may buy it personally, but not as a business. Everything's pointed outwards, and we only have just my brother. He inherited one car, and I inherited my car, and there's not many more out here that are actually spoken for from the family. But we've had them in the day, and if I find a nice one, I'm going to let my kids have a chance at getting them. Unfortunately, they didn't get a chance to enjoy the place when it was enjoyable. Yeah. When they were growing up. It was grown up, and a lot of mosquitoes out here, and it was not a pleasure to be here like when I was growing up. It was a pleasure to be here. We had tons of customers that we loved and as family, and they would, even if they moved away, they would come back and get their cars serviced here. Even if they moved an hour away, we would still work on the cars. The local AMC dealer in Goldsboro, we were sort of competitors with them. But when their business closed down, they came here, and my dad was their mechanic, and he was some of their employees became some of our best customers. So, you know, my dad, he was a really good mechanic, and that's sort of what kept everything going when he slowed down on selling cars. And but anyway, we've had some of everything. I always liked interesting cars, so we've had a variety of other cars here. It hasn't just been AMCs, but we would more than likely buy and sell a special interest car, and we would more likely to keep the AMC. But we sold several AMCs too. We've had some rare ones that have passed through our gates. There's probably over 10 convertibles of different Nashes and AMCs over the years. From 52 Lois Lane Nash Rambler convertible with the fixed windows, little fixed windows in the back. George Reeves also drove a Nash Healey in the old Superman series, black and white. Black and white and color, you see Nash Healeys in there. We've had a 54 Metropolitan convertible that went up to Massachusetts or Maine, the guy that restores Corvairs. We had a 64 Rambler American convertible, 66 Classic convertible, 67 Rebel convertible, 67 Ambassador convertible, and I think we even had a Renault GTA convertible, I think, but my memory's getting a little foggy. That would have been in the 80s. But we've had, besides we've had several like Cadillac convertibles and Mercedes, BMW convertibles. They had those too, but we would sell them. We weren't trying to make a whole lot of money. I'd find somebody that didn't want something and try to put them together with somebody that did want something, and there's a little bit, to pay for your food in between there, So we weren't trying to be rich or anything. We just, doing something that we enjoyed doing. But in the meantime, we were, my wife took care of my mother for about 28 years, and we, the family, sort of helped take care of my mom for years, and so we were sort of.
Mama's always got a comfort.
Yeah. Several videos on YouTube. One was just released yesterday. It's a podcast. I've never been on a podcast, but it was released yesterday, and that was fun. But I do plan myself to have a YouTube channel or a series of videos available in the near future, I would say in about 2 months, I should have some of those produced. And I'm glad you're starting your show here, and I think we're going to go and start digging out that blue pacer that you spoke for.
That's right.
All right, well, let's go start digging, I guess.
Well, I guess that wraps it up for us here at Collier Motors, right here at the last remaining AMC dealership in Pikeville, North Carolina. This is Combos, Talkin Shop. We'll catch you next time.
You know, Papa, you can't polish a turd.